It was a horrific experience that involves a lot of suffering, pain, discomfort, brokenness, damage and trauma. Now I'll try and break that down. No, it doesn't start off that way, and people don't start, you know, I'm a child of the 90s, you know, and the rave scene, and it was all kind of going out, nice clothes, clubbing, getting high, getting out of it and escaping. But I was an extremist from the get-go. So when other people seemed to be enjoying what they were doing, the obsession for me was wanting more, you know, and that's what separated me from others.
Yeah, addiction, it was just a lonely, painful place to be, where I often thought about suicide as a way out, because I just couldn't imagine living life without not using. My addiction completely dictated everything I ever did. You know, my drug use told me when to eat, when to sleep, you know, even when to go to the toilet. You know, it was that kind of desperate, and I did a lot of harm, you know, to myself, to my body, to my mind. You know, when I think about the harms I did to my family, friends, my community, I, you know, would beg, borrow and steal on a daily basis. I'd put my poor parents through hell. I think the worst thing I did was just rob them of peace of mind, because I'd go out that door and I just didn't know where I was going and what I would be doing and if I was going to come back.
Loneliness is a massive thing. So loneliness, more addiction is a massive point, because obviously when you're in active addiction, there's not many people who want to be around you, and you burn your bridges with family, friends. You're impossible to sustain any kind of healthy relationships. So with family, friends, work, maintaining the job, it's impossible.
I think my journey with addiction started very young. I was about 12. I think it all stemmed really from not coping from my dad's death. It was only me, my mum and dad, and my dad was my idol, and I couldn't cope with his death. Didn't want to really grieve in front of my mum in case I upset her. So started off with cannabis when I was 12. By the time I was 14, I was taking speeding pills, and it just progressed really. I naively thought that I could take heroin and I'd be the one person that didn't get addicted to it. Obviously I found out that was just ridiculous, because it got me hooked pretty quick. I never really committed many offences to fund my addiction. I always went out with dealers, because it was just a much simpler way of doing things.
So addiction was it got hold of me pretty quickly, and you know, I had quite a traumatic experience when I was a kid. My mum was diagnosed with cancer when I was 13 years of age. Now my mum was my world. I loved her with all my heart and soul. She was everything, my best friend. And they didn't tell me, because emotionally I wasn't always very good with dealing with that stuff, so it was kind of hidden, but I knew there was something wrong.
About 2 hours after leaving the Army Careers Office in Birmingham City Centre, it's the first time I smoked heroin. And obviously with heroin come crack cocaine, other substances, and it was every day, so I used substances every day, where possible.
It's funny with addiction, like it gets you into dark places, it strips you of who you are and all your morals. There's little flashes that, you know, you can look back on now and laugh about, but, you know, at the time, probably wasn't the best.
I started injecting drugs, you know, at the age of 15. I was IV using, and that my only goal in life was to stay high as often, as much as possible, to escape my reality.
I come from a lifestyle where when I did find drugs, they made me feel something other than I felt, and when I did find drugs, it was quite nice a feeling.
I suppose my usual day was a bit like Groundhog Day. You know, I'd wake up, I'd be withdrawing. The first thing I needed to do was I needed to sort out some money to go out and score, and you know, and that would be in a variety of different ways, whether it's being with people who really wasn't very nice, or you know, committing crime, or you know, borrowing and begging. It was just a constant chase, I suppose. Like, that's what it was like, that roller coaster, just not being able to get off, not having that control to stop.
But once I started using them substances, it became an obsession to escape, suppress and avoid. And the thing about it was, it progressed very quickly to selling drugs, hanging around with older people. It started to take things from me very quickly.
I remember through my addiction, he kind of wasn't one of them kind of people who maintained accommodation, so I remember sleeping rough a lot of times. So I slept in stairways, I slept in bin chutes. I had a lot of options in this block. There was 12 floors, so I had 12 bin chutes to choose from, to different apartments each night.
When they took my son away, I went 9 months of pregnancy without really experiencing it, because I was just too busy concentrating on getting my next hit, or I was on a methadone prescription but I was using heroin and crack on top. I had to have a C-section because was breached. Unbeknownst to me, that led to a social services referral for a risk of an unborn child of DV, and then obviously when they became involved, they tried to get me to go to meetings, but you tend to kind of have this thing called ostrich syndrome when you're using. You just bury your head in the sand and hope everything's going to go away. So I didn't engage with them, needless to say. So I think was 5 days old and I was still in the hospital. Thank God, by some miracle, he didn't have any forms of withdrawal. He didn't suffer in the slightest. There was no concerns. But they kept him in just to observe him. But on the 5th day, they told me that I wouldn't be taking him home.
But I didn't see a way out. I didn't think there was a way out. I wasn't introduced to a way out, so I didn't know. But somebody that I used to use with, and they'd got clean and they started working in services. And I just thought, bloody hell, how's that work? And I asked them and they told me. And I went straight in my work. I said, right, I want to go to treatment. I want to go to rehab. I'm going to have a go at that. And if that don't work, I'm happy to do whatever.
I just felt like I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I'd run out of kind of like lies and excuses and reasons for myself and my behaviour. And so when I got caught using by my mum, I had nothing else to tell her but the truth. And you know, she helped me get into treatment. She helped me refer to one of the local community drug teams, and they got me on a script and I engaged with them for a while.
I ended up in a treatment centre in Birmingham, and it was a voluntary thing and it was paid through benefits. And many times I'd made the decision to stop using, but I couldn't. I didn't have a solution. I didn't have the tools and I didn't know how to do it. And treatment taught me that. You know, it taught me about addiction. It taught me about obsession and compulsion. It taught me about feelings, about guilt, shame and remorse. It talked to me about powerlessness and how that is for me. It talked about denial. It gave me structure, it gave me routine, it gave me purpose, it gave me hope.
And I spent 3 months. I spent 3 months in the rehab, and we done groups and we had group therapy. Going back to 2014, this was, so kind of, it was a residential rehab. We had kind of, we had a psychologist where we'd have a one-to-one therapy session weekly, then we'd have group therapy. We'd have 12-step fellowship, mutual aid coming in, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Smart Recovery. We'd have so I started engaged in call it psychosocial interventions, which I'd never done before. I'd never give that the benefit of the doubt.
And I eventually went to rehab, and this rehab was 12-step. You know, I kind of like went there thinking it was going to be swimming pools and being able to read and lounge about, you know, and do acupuncture and, you know, yoga, and it wasn't. It was really hardcore. You know, I got strip searched as soon as I went in and thrown into this room of, I don't know, 40 other addicts. And, you know, the walls were grimy, and we had bins for ashtrays because you could smoke back then in the place. And it was not at all how I thought it was going to be. However, I spent 10 months there.
in a few weeks' time, I'll be celebrating 15 years of abstinence from all mood and mind-altering substances.
I've been clean 14 years. I haven't used any substances in that time. Ever since I got clean in rehab, I never looked back. And I've also been sober now for 2.5 years.
So now I'm still in recovery. I have a full-time job. I have a roof over my head. I've got a wonderful family. I've had both my children in recovery. Those bridges that I'd burnt, some of them I've been able to repair and, still working on them.
I'm a loving father. I have a beautiful partner. I have a lovely home. I have a car. I have a full-time job. I have friends. Healthy relationships.
I've worked here for 4 years. It was the one thing I said to my drug worker before I went to rehab. I said, when I get well, I'm coming for your job. And about 2 years after I'd got clean and I'd settled back into, normal life, I came down here to volunteer, got my qualifications, and then gained employment elsewhere to begin with. But I always felt like this was my home and I wanted to come back. So, yeah, I just want to use some of my negative, some of my positive experiences in life to help other people get well, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Recovery for me, I've been very blessed. I cleared hepatitis C in my first 2 years. I got qualifications. I became a substance misuse worker. I've worked in lots of different services, met lots of wonderful people. I haven't stayed in my comfort zones, I've come out of them. And I've ended up in a management position now. That all sounds great. The hope is for you, that previously I've been banned from this service. Now I'm one of its managers. And I really genuinely feel your empathy going, yeah, that's great for you, but would that happen for me? Let me tell you, it will happen for you if you're willing to do what it takes, which is to sacrifice that one thing that's hurting you.
One single, illicit substance or alcohol in my body for 20 years now, and I know that seems like a lot. And when I first got clean, that seemed would never happen. But days turns into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and months turn into years, and it does. It just becomes a part of life, like recovery. Living clean, and being a bit more spiritual. Trying to be honest, open-minded and willing as much as I can.
Where I'm at today is I'm in a place where I wouldn't change for the world. I wouldn't change it for one thing, and also I don't think I'd change any of my past. So you've obviously altered my past, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I suppose that's the pinnacle, that's the place what you want to get to in life, where sitting here today is nice, content, achieved. I believe I've achieved what I can for today. There's so much more to achieve.
Oh, my darling boy is 14 years old. 14 going on 40. But he's a beautiful boy, kind, sweet, loving, and proud of his mum, which is all I could ask for, really.